I'm Kaan, and today I will be presenting the role of biological factors in skeletal muscle tissue engineering. So, the presentation will follow this flow, basically. So, the clinical conditions such as muscular dystrophy, which is a genetic condition whose most prevalent type is Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and volumetric muscle loss, which is an acquired condition through physical trauma or extremely aggressive surgeries can be treated through skeletal muscle tissue engineering. This paper will be overviewing the current treatment methods of these conditions. It will be talking about skeletal muscle physiology and the current techniques in skeletal muscle tissue engineering. And after that, it will be examining the roles of certain biological factors and how they could improve regeneration in skeletal muscle tissue engineering. And these biological factors include IGF-1, VEGF, HGF, myostatin inhibitors, PDGFB, FGF2, insulin, androgens, and also it will overview certain bodily systems which affect regeneration in skeletal muscle and the potential methods to manipulate these systems for improved regeneration following transplantation of skeletal muscle tissue constructs. And finally, it will be covering challenges associated with the use of these biological factors and potential methods to overcome them. So, skeletal muscle tissue is connected to bones via tendons and is made up of individual muscle fibers, which are formed via cells fusing together. These muscle fibers are multinucleated, as you can see in the graph figure, and are covered by something called the basal lamina, which consists of collagen, laminin, and fibronectin, and it gives muscle tissue structure and strength, and also plays an important role in signaling. The most important part here is that there are satellite cells, stem cells specialized for skeletal muscle, that lie underneath the basal lamina. So the main important properties of skeletal muscle are that it has mechanical properties that can bear the dynamic loading that skeletal muscle has to go through as it is responsible for locomotion, and it has to be highly vascularized with dense capillary networks, sometimes reaching up to densities of 600 capillaries per millimeter. The current treatments for the loss of skeletal muscle tissue arising from the conditions I described in the introduction are corticosteroids such as prednisone and deflazacort for DMD, in addition to monitoring specialized diet and physical therapy, which altogether increase the quality of life and lifespan of patients, and autologous muscle transplantation for VML, which mostly FFMT, free functional muscle transfer is actually used in VML. However, these treatments methods are lacking, as in the treatment method for VML, never the premorbid function of the lost muscle can never really be restored, and the treatment in muscular dystrophy is lacking in a way that it really doesn't fully treat muscular dystrophy. It just alleviates some of the effects. So skeletal muscle tissue engineering can be a way to create better treatment methods for these conditions. I'm now going to be briefly covering skeletal muscle tissue engineering as a whole. In skeletal muscle tissue engineering, the main technique, as in all forms of tissue engineering, is to create scaffolds, seed those scaffolds with stem cells, and then transplant them into the patient. So in the main scaffold using technique, porous scaffolds with pores size between 20 and 100 micrometers should ideally be used as to allow for sufficient infiltration of the tissue by stem cells. And it should have stiffness values resembling that of skeletal muscle tissue, which are around 30 to 50 kilopascals. Also, while making uh, the scaffold should have certain, besides these certain properties, the scaffold should be constructed with the proper material choice in mind. Here, an interesting point is that piezoelectric materials can be used, and these piezoelectric materials are actually materials that generate electric signals from force. So in this case, it will be generating electric signals from movement. And the advantage of this is that these materials and these signals can support differentiation of the stem cells, which is uh, ideal and it's desired in skeletal muscle tissue engineering, as the stem cells must differentiate for the tissue to be functional. Additionally, it should be able to be easily vascularized and innervated following transplantation as to cope with the high energy demands of skeletal muscle tissue. And if a scaffold fulfills these properties, then stem cells would be isolated from the patient, which mostly the most prominent types of stem cells in skeletal muscle tissue engineering are myoblasts and satellite cells. Then the scaffold would be seeded with these stem cells, ideally. Then it would be ideally preconditioned through methods such as hypoxic preconditioning, which has been shown to increase vascularization, and mechanical preconditioning, which helps with the organization of the tissue into functional skeletal muscle, and then it will be transplanted into the patients. However, there is a newer, different method of skeletal muscle tissue engineering also utilized, which is self-assembling cell sheet engineering. And the advantage of this is that it creates models encased in cell-secreted ECM through having cells that secrete their own ECM in sheets and the harvesting of the sheets and then finally organization into tissue. So we will now be moving on to the overview of the biological factors, and I will quickly explain the findings of my review regarding each of the biological factors. So VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, has been shown to promote angiogenesis, which is basically the forming of new blood vessels. It has been shown to protect myoblasts, the used stem cell types, from apoptosis, and it has been shown to promote the proliferation and differentiation of these stem cells. IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, has been shown to protect myoblasts from apoptosis and promote proliferation and differentiation of myoblasts. HGF, or hepatocyte growth factor, has been shown to be able to activate quiescent satellite cells, and via activation, it's meant that it activates these cells and makes them start dividing, which is a desired effect. It has been shown to promote proliferation and inhibit differentiation at low doses. However, at higher doses, it has been shown to actually inhibit proliferation and promote differentiation. So in proliferation and differentiation, it does have a dose-dependent effect. Myostatin inhibitors have been shown to activate satellite cells and promote proliferation and differentiation of myoblasts. And basically what myostatin inhibitors are, that they inhibit myostatin, which actually inhibits muscle growth on its own. And some of these myostatin inhibitors that I looked into studies regarding them are crypto and RK35. So PDGFB, platelet-derived growth factor B, is shown to promote proliferation of myoblasts and is shown to actually promote angiogenesis only when used together with FGF2. FGF2 on its own, fibroblast growth factor 2, has been shown to promote the proliferation of myoblasts and has been shown to reduce apoptosis. And it's also, as mentioned previously, shown to promote angiogenesis together with PDGFB. Androgens, which most commonly to the public are known as anabolic steroids, have been shown to promote the proliferation and differentiation of myoblasts. And insulin has been shown to promote formation of skeletal muscle tissue, especially after injuries. So regarding the systems that I previously mentioned, which are the gut microbiome and immune system, for the gut microbiome, it has been shown in studies that D-malates produced by the gut microbiome, produced by actually certain bacteria in the gut microbiome as a metabolite, for example, Brevibacterium, has been shown to decrease skeletal muscle mass through its negative effects on angiogenesis. And despite other than metabolites, there have been it has been shown that certain gut bacteria and them having higher numbers are correlated with decreased muscle mass and density, while other gut bacteria have a positive effect on muscle mass. The biggest example of this from my study was that an age-associated increase in Sutterella bacteria has been shown to result in decreased gastrocnemius muscle mass due to the decrease in Barnesiella, which is a bacteria type in the gut microbiome that promotes skeletal muscle tissue regeneration and formation. So due to this and due to the fact that that it has been shown in other studies that some bacteria have positive effects and overall the gut microbiome has positive effects on skeletal muscle tissue regeneration. The only viable method is targeted elimination of aforementioned bacteria that have negative effects on the skeletal muscle tissue regeneration, as destroying the whole gut microbiome with antibiotics may have the opposite effect that is intended. So the only method that might work currently for manipulation of the gut microbiome is using bacteriophages, which might be viable to aid in regeneration. For the immune system, following damage to skeletal muscle tissue, M1 macrophages come in to increase proliferation, and these macrophages are inflammatory macrophages and inhibit differentiation. However, later on, through the release of anti-inflammatory cytokines such as IL-10, M2 macrophages come in to inhibit proliferation and promote differentiation. It has been shown in the studies that I reviewed that exogenous M1 or MCCSF or macrophage colony stimulating factor delivery can speed up recovery following skeletal muscle tissue injuries, while GDF3 produced by M2 macrophages slightly reduces proliferation while highly inducing myotube formation and differentiation, which is a highly desired effect in skeletal muscle tissue engineering. Due to this information, I have concluded that in my paper, the incorporation of M2 or anti-inflammatory cytokines can be beneficial, as also high levels of inflammatory signals have been shown in studies to be detrimental to skeletal muscle tissue degeneration. Regarding the challenges with the use of these biological factors and future directions for research that I covered in my paper, I have identified the challenges to be mainly short half-lives, which most of the peptide-based growth factors actually have, such as IGF-1, as they get eliminated really quickly in the body. Side effects in unintended areas of the body from the use of these biological factors, such as insulin resistance occurring from IGF-1 and the potential of hepatic ruptures, which is the rupturing of the liver from androgen usage, and the tumorigenicity of certain factors, such as VEGF, as VEGF has been shown in some studies to be able to make existing cancer worse, and also is known to play a critical role in angiogenesis for tumor formation too, and has been shown to play a role in the spreading of cancer, so metastasis. I have identified the future directions as slow release mechanisms to solve the problem of short half-lives, and have talked about some existing studies that these slow release mechanisms have been used in, such as nanoclay discs or the incorporation of silicon nanocomposites. Also, the localization of biological factors is another important future direction, as it will most likely help with the side effects challenge of these biological factors. And another missing part of this studies that I noticed in my research was that human clinical trials regarding the use of these factors were lacking in especially skeletal muscle tissue engineering. And an important future direction here would be conducting human clinical trials. Finally, the testing of gut microbiota manipulation through bacteriophages, as I outlined previously, and the incorporation of immune system components into skeletal muscle tissue constructs were also identified as important future directions that should be researched into. So in general, the conclusions that I made in this paper are that there are some systems affecting regeneration which should be looked into, such as the gut microbiome, with some genera of bacteria being negative while others being, and overall the gut microbiome being positive, and the immune system, and this affects through GDF3 secretion by M2 macrophages, the M1 to M2 phenotype transition in macrophages, which is important for regeneration, and the negative effects of inflammation. So desired effects I have identified in this paper are increasing differentiation of stem cells, aiding in the activation of quiescent satellite cells, increasing number of proliferating cells, increasing stem cell survivability, and promoting angiogenesis. Regarding all of these criteria, among the biological factors that I have reviewed, IGF-1 through its anti-apoptotic proliferation promoting and differentiation promoting effects, VEGF through its important role in angiogenesis, its anti-apoptotic effects, and its role in proliferation and differentiation, and myostatin inhibitors through its role in satellite cell activation, proliferation, and differentiation, have been identified as the most effective biological factors that hold the most promise and should be researched more into. However, there are still challenges that remain that I have, as said previously, identified, such as unintended side effects elsewhere in the body, the increase of cancer risk, which especially would become a problem if these treatments are administered to someone suffering from VML due to aggressive tumor ablation surgery and having a very short elimination life in the body. Do still remain and were identified in this paper. However, the future directions that may mitigate this and should be looked into further were, in short, that further research should be conducted into increasing localization of biological factors to muscle tissue, conducting clinical trials on the biological factors covered in this paper should also be an important future direction for research, as there's a current lack, as mentioned before, of clinical trials. The investigation of the effects on muscle of using bacteriophages, specifically engineered to eliminate several negatively impacting bacterial genera, should also be looked into, as there are no current studies on that, and that was a novel idea that I have shared in my research. And examination of the impacts of incorporating certain immune system components, such as M2 macrophages, into skeletal muscle constructs, should also be examined, as at the time that I published this paper, such research was missing. That concludes my presentation on my paper. These are my university mail and normal school mail that you might use. And this whole presentation was based on my paper published in the Journal of High School Science in September 23rd, 2024.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. We'll open up now to any questions that anyone has, any questions or comments. Okay, my question for you is, what was the most interesting thing or surprising thing that you found out through the course of your research?
I would say that the most surprising thing that I have found out, even though it's kind of not surprising, as this system plays a very important role in all of the body, is that the gut microbiome actually had a significant effect on muscle regeneration that was actually able to be observed by research papers.
Okay, in that case, thank you so much for your presentation.